Brooks are going to suck up all those targets. I think they're going to be spread around through, the C.J. Spillers and guys like that. The Josh Hills, the tight end taking the spot of Jimmy Graham. So yeah, definitely I think I'll be moving Spiller up on my draft boards. Possibly even moving Mark Ingram down a little bit with these news, because Mike Triplett is definitely one of the better beat reporters, and he pretty much nails it most years when he says something like that. It's pretty much spot on. So barring injury, I think Spiller is definitely in for a big season, especially in PPR leagues. The next thing I got on here is Ronnie Hillman. May not make the Denver Broncos team. Now, that's not necessarily fantasy relevant in the sense that, he's already behind three other guys. Monty Ball is definitely ahead of him. Of course, C.J. Anderson's ahead of him. So he's not relevant in Denver. But the thing is, if he gets cut early enough to where he can get picked up by another team, I believe he's making league minimum right now. So he would definitely, I think, be added at least until, at least just kick the tires, see if he's got anything left. He's only 24, so he's not like he's an old guy. He's been in the league for a while, but he's still 24 years old, so he's definitely not in his prime, not even past his prime. So there could be some good things to be had there. So I think that makes him relevant in fantasy if he goes somewhere to a running back needy team, and he has the potential to earn a job there. He may not start right away, but you can definitely see him sometime in the mid-season, starting. So I think that's something just to keep an eye on. I definitely wouldn't draft him, not even as a late-round flyer, but maybe just put him on your watch list. Just keep an eye out, see where he might go. All right, the last thing I got on here is the Baltimore Sun reports that Justin Forsett's receptions could double in 2015. And first I was kind of like, this is the Baltimore Sun reporting this. Might just be one of those statements that they make to get headlines. But when I actually looked at it and kind of broke it down a little bit, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because we all know Mark Trestman is there, and everywhere that Mark Trestman has been, his running backs have been a big part of the passing game. His running backs actually have averaged 72 catches per year over the course of his career. So definitely something worth looking at. Justin Forsett, I believe, was in the 40s in catches last year, maybe even like the high 30s. So if he's up in the 70 catch range, that definitely adds value, especially in PPR. So Justin Forsett, he was one of the top running backs last year, and he's getting no respect. I think he's ranked as a mid-round pick. He might not even be ranked as an RB1. Might be down there as an RB2, which is just crazy to me. With Mark Trestman there, it's definitely something to look at, because Forte had 100 receptions, under Trestman. So it's not out of the possibility that, that Forsett actually can catch 60 to 70 balls this year. So definitely something to keep an eye on, something to think about. If Forsett starts to slip down drafts and he's just sitting there and you're in a PPR league, I would definitely think about picking him up. I know there's a lot of question marks about his age and the fact that he's only had one good season. He played backup for most of his career. He was backup last year in Baltimore until injuries and suspensions happened that put him into the starting role. So there are question marks there, but definitely something to be looking at. That's all I got for the news and notes, guys. We're going to go ahead and get into some readers' questions that I put out on Twitter. Had some people send me in some questions, so we'll go ahead and get into those.
Mailbag.
All right, the first question comes from Jason in New York. And Jason wants to know if AP, Adrian Peterson, if he'll bounce back, and in what position would I take him in a snake draft? Will AP bounce back? Now, I just read a story today that said that he felt he wasn't as explosive as he would like to be. That makes me a little nervous considering he's 30 years old. You usually don't start to get more explosive when you're in your 30s. Now, granted, he hasn't played in over a year, so that could be some of it. I will say that in the drafts that I am in the top 5 picks, I am avoiding taking Adrian Peterson. Do I think he'll have a good year? Yes. But the risk that's involved with taking Adrian Peterson is too high for me to risk using my top draft pick on. If I had to put a rank on him, I'm probably going to put him like 3rd, 4th, or 5th, with a little bit leaning more towards the 5th pick. I'd have a hard time taking him at 1 or 2. I know a lot of fantasy sites have him at number 1 overall. I just, with the controversy and the fact that he hasn't played in over a year and he's 30 years old, there's just too many things to keep me from taking him number 1 overall. So I hope that answers your question. I do think he will bounce back. I just don't know if he's going to be a number 1 type pick. All right, Brendan from Alexandria, Virginia wants to know what mid-round selected running back will be best in PPR formats. I wrote down a couple of names here. I went through the ADP at fantasypros.com to kind of see where these guys are being drafted. Basing on a 10-team league, there's a couple running backs that I would be targeting for a PPR league. One of those we already talked about. His ADP right now is currently at 62. So in a 10-team league, that puts him at the bottom of the 6th, top of the 7th round. And that's C.J. Spiller. We just talked about his reception potential there in New Orleans, 60 plus. That definitely puts him in PPR land. The problem with C.J. Spiller is, will he come out when he gets down around the goal line? Will they put in Mark Ingram? The one advantage they have there, as far as that goes, is once the New Orleans Saints get in that hurry-up offense, they don't typically switch out the running backs. So Spiller was to say come in, within inside the 20 on a few passing downs. They're not going to slow down the offense to bring in Ingram, when they get down in close. So they might just leave Spiller in there. Now that doesn't mean that he's going to get touchdowns, because they might just leave him in there and just use him as a decoy, and throw the ball to somebody else, or whatever the case may be. But I do think that he's definitely a viable PPR format guy. 60 receptions is nothing to sneeze at. That's basically 60 points if you're playing full point PPR. Another guy that's a little bit farther down the list there is Giovanni Bernard. People have kind of forgotten about him. He had a couple injuries last year. Jeremy Hill burst onto the scene. Had a phenomenal season. But the way that everybody's talking about Jeremy Hill this year is the same way they were talking about Giovanni Bernard at the beginning of last year. So I wouldn't necessarily discount, his talent and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, his ability to run it. I could potentially see a running back by committee, with Jeremy Hill and Gio. I mean, from a real football perspective, that's actually ideal to have 2 running backs that can, carry the load, because it keeps both of them fresh. Now, I know we hate that term, running back by committee here in fantasy world, but the fact of the matter is, it's just part of life now. So Giovanni Bernard is definitely someone I'd be targeting. He's currently going at the ADP of 71. So again, bottom of the 7th, or I guess 7th round, maybe at the 8th round, depending on how many teams you have in your league. And then one more player that's a little bit farther down, a little bit more risky, but definitely has some high upside, and that's Shane Vereen. He's now in New York. New York's got quite the stable of running backs now, with Rashad Jennings and Shane Vereen and Andre Williams. They got a couple running backs up there that could all be viable in fantasy. I think Rashad Jennings is the one that actually gets the workload. I think Shane Vereen is definitely the passing down back, and Andre Williams really has to prove himself after last season, because he got the opportunity to fill in for Rashad Jennings and just didn't show us anything. So he has to basically show himself before he can get any time on the field, because we know Coughlin won't give you no time if you're not producing. So yeah, those are 3 running backs I would definitely look at in a PPR format. Shane Vereen, I don't know if I gave you his ADP. It's going at 94, so he's down 9th, 10th round. Definitely could be a steal. So I would definitely look at that. All right, next question was Chip from Detroit. Um, he wants to know which rookie running back will provide the biggest splash to fantasy football this season, PPR or standard. Um, this is an easy one for me. He's the only running back that I have ranked currently in my top 20 as a rookie, and that's Melvin Gordon for San Diego. And it's not that I think that he's the most talented running back. The argument can be made that Todd Gurley is more talented, and you got Jay Ajayi in Miami. Those kind of guys, could be more talented. But I think the opportunity for Melvin Gordon is in San Diego. Jay Ajayi is going to be playing back up to Lamar Miller. Todd Gurley, we're not even sure if he's going to be starting the season or not. He might start the season on the PUP list. Who knows? Trey Mason may start the season. But I think Melvin Gordon gets the starting job right from the start. So I think just the opportunity alone, and it's a pretty good offense when you got Phillip Rivers. And I would have said Antonio Gates, but of course the first 4 games he's not going to be there. But they still have Ladarius Green, who's a very good tight end in his own right, just hasn't broken out yet. So they got a pretty good offense down there. So Melvin Gordon definitely is one I'm looking at as a rookie running back. And like I said, he's the only one of the rookies that actually make my top 20 in running backs. Now, of course, that could change once we see preseason. One of these rookie running backs may shine through a little bit brighter. But as it stands right now, I'm going with Melvin Gordon. Jonathan from Chicago says, do you believe any of the second-year starting quarterbacks will emerge as a late-round steal? And he listed 3 of them here, Bridgewater, Bortles, and Carr. I like Bridgewater a lot. His rookie season was a little up and down. He had to deal with the whole Adrian Peterson not being there. Cordero Patterson was supposed to be this breakthrough receiver and just didn't show up. But even with all those things going around him, I don't know if anybody realizes, but this guy had a 65% completion percentage. That's higher than Tom Brady's. Tom Brady's always been, known as an accurate quarterback, and so for Bridgewater to actually have a higher percentage than Tom Brady, it's pretty good. And I think this year he definitely got a lot more weapons than he had last year. With the signing of Mike Wallace, Charles Johnson, his emergence last year at the end of the season. Of course, Adrian Peterson's back, and that will help any quarterback. There's the threat of the run. They can't drop everyone back into coverage and just say beat us with the run. They have to respect the running game. They might put 8 men in the box to stop Peterson, which leaves one of those speedy receivers, be it Charles Johnson or Mike Wallace or Cordero Patterson. Fast guys. They could definitely get behind the safeties, and if Bridgewater can get them the ball, just get it in their hands is all he's got to do. I think he could be in for a huge season this year. He's of those 3, I think he has the best situation right now. The Raiders are still a mess. They're moving in the right direction, but let's face it, they're the Raiders. They haven't been good in forever. And Bortles, I think, again, Jaguars are getting better. I think they're doing things the right way. But I think they're at least 1 or 2 years away before they're actually relevant. Whereas I think Minnesota could be a playoff team this year. They were a playoff team the last time Peterson was on the field, so I don't see why not with Peterson back and the weapons they have and Bridgewater at QB, potentially a playoff team. So I think I'd go with Bridgewater on that question. And then we finally have Elaine from San Antonio says, do you believe wide receiver Jarvis Landry is worth a look in standard leagues or only in PPR? So obviously Jarvis Landry is a possession-type receiver, very volume. He's going to catch a lot of passes this year, which is why she mentioned that, obviously he's a high pick in PPR, but will he be a high pick in standard leagues? I think you have to lower him a little bit, but I do think he is definitely still viable. I'm actually really high on the Dolphins in general. I really like Tannehill as a quarterback. I really like Lamar Miller as a running back. They got Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills. They added Jordan Cameron. I really see the Dolphins as being, a lot of relevance as far as fantasy coming from the Dolphins this year. So to answer your question, I do think he is definitely worth a look in standard leagues, maybe more than just a look. I think he definitely is draftable. Definitely should be going, mid-rounds. I wouldn't go too crazy. But I believe he'll lead the Dolphins in receiving this year. There's no reason why he shouldn't.